We're closing out Week 10 with a superpower showdown between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Green Bay Packers. Both of these teams are sitting atop their division at the time of writing, with aims to recapture Super Bowl glory. We'll see which of these storied teams will be victorious in the simulation, but first, let's get behind the bar and make our drink a Talon Punch. Ending Week 10 on a high note with a high-powered matchup between the Packers and the Eagles. A funny coincidence this week. Both of these teams' drinks were created as Super Bowl celebration drinks, which I think just further speaks to the strength of this matchup. We're going to start with a more recent Super Bowl, though, and begin with Philadelphia's representative, the Eagle Teeny. Now, as a social media drink created for last year's Super Bowl, I have the origin of this cocktail down to the exact day, January 19th, by Hosting Girl Era on Instagram. As for the drink itself, this is just another classic team drink, just straight aesthetics. As long as it's easy to drink, flavors don't really matter. I will say though, she absolutely nailed the aesthetic. That glitter is a really nice touch, and the color for the drink is spot on. Besides the visual flair, this is really a quite basic drink, using Eagles branded vodka, which is a nice little tie-in, pineapple juice, lime juice, and blue curacao. It's funny because this isn't a Smirnoff creation, but it really does have a kind of similar energy to those types of drinks. Packers representative is another Super Bowl celebration drink. It's the Packers Punch. Now, the few of you who have been following this closely, you might remember that I used the Packer Punch back in Week 4. Or rather, I used a Packer Punch. Because see, there's two main categories of Packer Punches. There's the Midori Packer Punches and the Bourbon Packer Punches. We used the Midori back in Week 4, so this week is going to be a Bourbon Packers Punch. This version was made back in 2011 for Super Bowl 45, and as befitting the name, it is actually a punch recipe, calling for 12 ounces of bourbon, 4 ounces of triple sec, 32 ounces of lemonade, 16 ounces of lemon lime soda, and an apple for vibes, I guess. As a result, there was a bit of a ratio adjustment that I had to do converting from a punch recipe to a more standard cocktail. I also had to decide if I was going to keep the lemonade and lemon lime soda and do this as like a long drink, or cut them out and do it as more of a traditional cocktail. I think this drink would probably be more interesting as a long drink, but we've already done one highball so far this week, and the traditional cocktails photograph a lot nicer than highballs, so I decided to cut them out and just do this sort of served up. So as a result, our final spec is going to be 1.5 ounces of bourbon. Honestly, feels kind of like a waste using a nice bourbon like this in this cocktail. I was going back and forth on using the rye, but I can't use a bourbon-based Packers Punch and then not use an actual bourbon, Just feels rude. 1/2 ounce of triple sec. Again, the theme of this drink actually is really just Connor using way too nice ingredients for this drink. Cointreau is a very lovely triple sec, and we kind of wasted in this drink. 3/4 ounce of pineapple juice. It's actually my last can. I'm gonna have to go get some more pineapple juice. Make this drink for when I photograph it. God, love that. And then finally, a mere 1/4 ounce of blue curacao. We really just sort of want this in there for the color. Flavor is very much secondary on this front. See if I got the color right when I pour this out. That's all there is, another simple drink. We're gonna shake this up. Wow, I think even that 1/4 ounce of blue curacao might have actually been a little bit too heavy. Strain that into our coupe glass. Yeah, that's closer to the Jaguars color than it was either Packers or Eagles. But regardless, this is our Talon Punch. Let's give it a try. It does really have that like mint green look of almost like toothpaste. Highly doubt it tastes like toothpaste though. Ugh! Which one of you fucking did this?
Well, it was fucking one of yous. Disgusting!
Okay, wait, what? Wait, why is this bad? Hold on. Why does it actually taste like toothpaste? I'm so confused right now. Hold on. Oh, that's bad. What the fuck, dude? Okay, I think I'm legitimately confused. Okay. What's happening there? Is it? No, I mean, that's totally good pineapple juice. It's not like pineapple juice is not bad or anything. Okay. I think I know what's happening. Let me just go back in to confirm this hypothesis. Okay. I think two things are happening in this drink. Thing number one is that I think I really overestimated the both acidity and sweetness of this pineapple juice. And as a result, there's just not enough. The drink's too boozy. There's not enough sweetness in it. There's also not enough acid to sort of cut through the sugar of like the triple sec and the blue curacao. So it's a weird problem where fundamentally, right, there's sort of three main, if you're really looking at a drink on like a scientific level, right, there's three main sort of values you're interested in. There's your ABV, alcohol by volume, basically how strong, how boozy a drink is. There's your sweetness, which is usually measured in grams per liter. Pretty self-explanatory. It's how sweet the drink is. And then your acid, which is percent titratable acid, usually is how that's measured. How acidic a drink, right? I know I've talked a lot about the cookbook Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat for cooking. I think, in my opinion, it doesn't quite roll off the tongue as well, but booze, sugar, acid is the cocktail equivalent of salt, fat, acid, right? Those are your three sort of main pillars in a cocktail. And obviously you have flavor notes to consider, right? Certain flavors will pair well with each other, certain flavors won't pair well with each other. But you can get away with a cocktail that has bad flavors if those three pillars are well balanced, right? It'll probably strike you as odd or strange, but it won't strike you as bad. Typically, when you have a drink and you're like, this is bad, it's either because you have a truly awful flavor mix in there, those can certainly happen, or you fucked up sort of your three pillars there, right? So I think problem number one is that this drink's pillars are off. It's too boozy, not sweet enough, not acidic enough. I think you can fix some of that by just straight up increasing the amount of pineapple juice in this drink. You can fix some of it by, say, adding in an extra, you probably only need like a 1/4 ounce each of like sweet simple syrup and lime juice. You could go up to 1/2 ounce on both of those though, and it probably would be fine and honestly probably better overall. So that's issue number one. Issue number two is that I think this pineapple juice is kind of bringing out the worst in the triple sec and our blue curacao. Yeah, it brings out the kind of, of the triple sec, it brings out the harshest version of that orange note. Like one of the things I love about Cointreau is it's a very sort of potent orange flavor. And normally it's a very sort of well-rounded orange flavor. But I think what the pineapple juice is doing is it's kind of covering up part of it. And the bits that you're left with are those like really harsh, really kind of like, if you've ever had like, the like an orange extract, right? Any sort of like orange oil where it's like super concentrated, super potent. That's kind of the flavor that you're getting, and you're not getting the sweetness that kind of rounds out the flavor profile. So it's pulling that out of the Cointreau. And then from the blue curacao, it's pulling out like the most artificial version of the orange. Instead of just like being a bit of sweetness and being a bit of color in this drink, it is really pulling to the forefront those like nasty artificial notes that are usually kind of buried in the blue curacao. But I think the pineapple juice is kind of like bringing them to the forefront. And I think the bourbon actually isn't helping things. You know, I think if you had gone with a vodka, right, it's just going to sort of get out of the way. A rum would actually probably be the best choice of spirit for this drink, because I think a rum would bring a little extra sweetness, even just like a white rum. You know, I think that would be, white rum is probably the best spirit for this drink. The bourbon isn't bringing enough sweetness to meaningfully offset, you know, to meaningfully fix those pillars. And it's bringing in just enough sort of extra notes and intrigue to compound all of these issues of the, like, this really bad flavor pairing. Yeah, it's, now that I've had a chance to like shift my expectations and like sort of temper my palate a little bit, it's not as bad as when I first tried it. But this was a shock to me. I thought for sure this was going to be another like kind of boring run-of-the-mill, like, oh, yep, here we go, 4 ingredients, toss them together, the drink's fine, whatever, I can go make dinner. That is not what happened here. This is a bad drink. This shit evil. Oh my god, well, you fucking learn something new every day, I guess. Jesus Christ. Well, with such a bad drink, I really hope this matchup lives up to expectations, but we'll have to find out in the simulation. The Packers start with the ball, but they quickly disappoint the home crowd by going 3 and out and punting it away to the Eagles. A big Saquon run helps the Eagles make it down to the red zone, but Javon Bullard breaks up this 3rd down conversion, and the Eagles are probably just glad he didn't pick that one off, as they get to settle for the chip shot field goal. In response to that score, this Packers offense gets a little spooky, as Love finds Kraft for an eldritch 8-yard touchdown. Philly doesn't waste any time in striking back, though, as it takes less than 2 minutes for them to make it to the Packers' 3-yard line, where Hurts just strolls on in for the score, putting the Eagles back on top. Both of these offenses are moving the ball really well, as the Packers are back in the red zone in the second quarter, but the Eagles get pressure and force Love to just throw this ball away on 3rd down. The 31-yard field goal is no problem for McManus, though, who ties the game up at 10. Following that, the Packers' defense finally comes up with a stop, and with less than a minute left in the first half, Love fires to Wicks for the 17-yard score, putting the Pack up 17-10 at the half. Saquon came out of halftime pissed, though, as on the very first play from scrimmage, he hits the hole, dodges one defender, and then just takes off flying downfield, carrying this 75 yards to tie the game up. At the end of the third quarter, Philly is looking to pull in front, as Hurts lofts one up to Devonta Smith in the end zone, but the Packers secondary makes sure he can't come down with it. However, Jake Elliott is good from 43, putting the Eagles up 3 points. Halfway through the fourth quarter, Eagles are looking to make this a 2-score game, but the Packers defense makes another stand, with Xavier McKinney blitzing and sacking Hurts, limiting the Eagles to their 3rd field goal of the night. That stop makes all the difference, as Love leads the Pack on a methodical drive all the way down to the 6-yard line, where he dumps it off to Jacobs, who easily gets it across the line for the go-ahead touchdown. Now, Philly does have all 3 timeouts, so a comeback is possible, but on the second play of the drive, Hurts fires into a crowd of bodies and Edge Cooper picks it off, ending their hope and letting the Packers kneel out the rest of the clock to secure their 24-23 victory. Well, this game certainly lived up to its billing, a really tight game that ultimately came down to the final drive. Big moments on both sides, offense and defense, and nothing that really screamed Madden bug. I have absolutely no idea who's going to win this game in real life. I think these are 2 really evenly matched teams, and as a result, a 1-point victory feels appropriate in this kind of matchup. Jordan Love definitely put up the better QB performance in this one, racking up 247 yards and 3 touchdowns. No interceptions, though he did have plenty of incompletions, mostly due to trying to push the ball downfield to convert on 3rd and longs. Hurts was pretty much the exact opposite, 80% completion rate and 231 passing yards, but no touchdowns and that one game-sealing interception. Very good games from both of these running backs. Saquon looked in prime form, thanks largely to that 75-yard run. Still, his other 9 attempts went for 50 yards, which is a solid showing in of itself. Josh Jacobs didn't quite break the 100-yard mark, notching 93 yards on 14 carries, but still a very strong game. This would actually only be his 2nd game all season where he hasn't had a rushing touchdown. The quarterback rushes were pretty much identical, with 3 scrambles for around 20 yards apiece, though Hurts did turn one of those rushes into a touchdown. In the receiving category, we see the rare instance of wide receiver 1s getting love, as A.J. Brown brought in 8 balls for 125 yards, leading the Eagles. Similar situation on the Packers, as Matthew Golden leads their receivers with 5 catches for 77 yards. Packers still spread the ball around a lot, as they love to do though, with 4 other pass catchers seeing meaningful involvement. And of course, Madden has heard me talking shit and decided to correct the checkdown issues, as once again, both running backs have reasonable reception numbers, with Saquon only bringing in 2 catches for 15 yards, actually a bit below his average this year. Well, these 2 QBs continue to put up similar performances in the Monte Carlo sim, albeit with the usual stat deflation. Just over 180 passing yards apiece, and speaking of similarities, these running backs continue to perform in the Monte Carlo sim. Saquon stays in the lead, but the margin shrinks significantly between the two. And the similarities don't stop there, as Golden and Brown continue to lead their team in receptions and receiving yards, though Kraft is nipping right at Golden's heels. However, despite all those statistical similarities, the actual results of the sim tilt quite significantly in Philly's favor, as the most common result is a 21-14 Eagles victory. This margin of victory comes down a little bit when you account for all 10,000 games, but still firmly favors the Eagles with a final score of 23-18. And of course, as the last game of the week, it's time to get into the standings. Over in the AFC, we have literally no movement. As a result, I won't reiterate all the ways in which the current standings are similar or different from the real-world standings, but I do just want to point out one funny thing. Despite the Dolphins leading the AFC East at 6-4, they've got a pretty firmly negative point differential at -15. Over in the NFC, we see our only bit of meaningful movement as the Lions leapfrog the Packers for the top of the NFC North, since that significant Monte Carlo loss canceled out their Madden victory. Otherwise, not much has changed, and I'm starting to wonder if there will be a team this year that can knock off the undefeated Eagles in this simulation. Do you agree with the simulations, or do you envision a different future? I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts down in the comments. As a reminder, our drink for this matchup is the surprisingly nasty Talon Punch. Please don't make it, but if for some reason you do, please let me know what you think, and I'd love to hear your suggestions for what drink should be your team's representative. Stay curious, stay thirsty, and I'll see you in the next one.